Welcome back into another episode of the Daily Fix. I am Stephen Serda. It is Friday, March 7th. Thank you guys for joining us here on Foolish Club Media. As always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. One more weekend until we get some answers across the NFL in free agency as the legal tampering period begins on Monday. So should be a busy couple of days to start next week. So just want to keep you up to date here. This is your first time on the Daily Fix. Just a reminder, it's a few quick topics. We don't keep you very long here, just trying to keep you up to date across the NFL and on the Kansas City Chiefs, which been a pretty quiet week for the Chiefs overall, but some interesting news and notes that you want to know about as we head into the free agent market on Monday, and we'll see things really start to pick up. It seems like the Cleveland Browns just continue to be one of the absolutely worst run teams in all of the NFL, with the worst owner in the game, who I feel like we don't even talk about enough anymore for whatever reason. And then just a couple of quick things from the Kansas City Chiefs as we head into the weekend, and we're gearing up for free agency to really kick into gear on Monday. Just couple of quick news and notes, thoughts before we head into that. But where I want to start, veteran pass rusher market, I think, is one that heading into the offseason, maybe we didn't quite understand how this thing was going to develop with, players like Myles Garrett wanting out of Cleveland, or Trey Hendrickson all of a sudden becoming available via trade from the Cincinnati Bengals, because their hands are tied right now and they're insisting that they want to hold on to T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow and figure out a way to make all of that work, while also basically gutting their entire defensive side of the ball. But Hendrickson has had more sacks than any player in the NFL in the last 2 years. And we know how special Myles Garrett is as a player, is he's trying to demand a trade. And I'll get to my thoughts on Garrett specifically here in a little bit, but I don't necessarily think that the Chiefs are going to be in on either one of those players. As far as Hendrickson goes, I don't think Cincinnati would even answer the phone calls of Brett Veach in the Kansas City Chiefs. But the Chargers also released Joey Bosa on Thursday, freeing up nearly $25 million in cap space. Now, Bosa, Chiefs fans obviously know him well, but Bosa's only 29 years old. Somehow he's been in the league for 9 seasons. And when he actually stays on the field, he's still a pretty good player. But the problem with Bosa is that he has only managed to play 16 or more games 3 times in his 9-year NFL season. In the last 3 years, he hasn't even come close to playing a full regular season allotment of games. So I think Bosa, it'll be interesting to see what his market is, because I still think he's a talented player when he is healthy. It's just that he has hardly been healthy, and the Chiefs have so many question marks in this offseason and ahead of this free agent class. I expect them to be very active, and I know they need defensive line help because Charles Omenihu is set to hit the open market. I'm interested to see what he could command out there, coming off of a nice season, but also coming off of that serious injury where he wasn't available for a lot of the season. So curious to see what happens with him. And then a player like Tershawn Wharton, who it's been reported that he's going to have a bigger market than I think we initially anticipated. The Washington Commanders released defensive tackle Jonathan Allen, who, Jonathan Allen may not be like a superstar pass rusher or something like that, but his body type and profile, exactly what Steve Spagnuolo and this defensive coaching staff covets along the defensive line. So I think he's an interesting player to watch. Just overall, Chiefs, plenty of questions along the defensive line outside of Chris Jones and George Karlaftis and Mike Dana heading into this offseason. But I think it's a lot deeper along the defensive line in free agency than we initially thought. So just curious to see how those things shape up for the Kansas City Chiefs. And those are the players that we should all certainly be keeping tabs on ahead of Monday and the legal tampering period beginning and free agency officially getting underway across the NFL. Now, Myles Garrett, obviously, if he is actually available via trade, he is going to be the most coveted player on the open market, because Myles Garrett is a superstar. He is a special special pass rusher at the NFL level, and he is still in his prime. This is like, prime TJ Watt or JJ Watt or something like that coming available on the market, or being available via trade while they were still in their prime. Like, this is like the Rams deciding, hey, we're just going to move on from Aaron Donald, or Aaron Donald trying to force his way out of LA in the middle of his prime. Like, Myles Garrett is that special kind of player. And the latest update in this whole situation is that Myles Garrett reportedly requested a meeting with Browns owner Jimmy Haslam, which, my thoughts on Jimmy Haslam. I have shared them very openly before. I think Jimmy Haslam is the worst owner in the sport. I think the Browns are run by a small man and a guy who's got lots of problems dealing with people and has gone out of his way at every turn to prove that. And then they've just continued to double down on Deshaun Watson, even though we all know that was one of the biggest boneheaded decisions in NFL history. And Myles Garrett's finally had enough. Myles Garrett wants out of Cleveland, and he is insisting that he will miss games going into next season if they refuse to trade him. And now Browns owner Jimmy Haslam is straight up refusing to even meet with Myles Garrett, saying that, like, oh, our offseason does not include any kind of plan to trade Myles Garrett, as if the Browns are going anywhere. Like, as if the Browns are all of a sudden going to be a playoff team or a contending team or something like that. That team is not ready to win anything. That team is not going to compete or do anything of note with Deshaun Watson as their starting quarterback. Like, that is definitive. We could say that with confidence at this point. And Jimmy Haslam is just such a joke, man. It's just so frustrating to watch a player like Myles Garrett be trapped there in Cleveland for all these years. And even when there was expectations for a team like Cleveland, like with Baker Mayfield a few years ago, they actually made the playoffs and won a playoff game. Like, even when there's been expectations for this team, they've never, ever been anything other than like a one and done playoff team. And a lot of that has to do with ownership. A lot of that has to do with Jimmy Haslam and what an awful owner he is. And now poor Kevin Stefanski is handcuffed by Deshaun Watson. Myles Garrett wants out because he knows he is never going to win there, and he is just going to wind up being the next Joe Thomas, just on these bad teams year after year after year, wasting his body and his talents in a place like Cleveland. And he can't even get a meeting with the owner when he is the most important player to the franchise. Like, just an absolute joke. Now, of course, the Chiefs aren't going to be in the market for this. I would expect it's going to be way too costly for them. But hey, if you're going to make a blockbuster kind of deal, it would be awesome to go trade for a player like Myles Garrett. Don't see it happening, but I would be totally on board with the Chiefs trying to make something like this happen. But Myles Garrett, I hope you find your way out of Cleveland, and I hope things turn around for you as a player, because you are a stud and the Browns organizationally suck. Now, a couple other quick news and notes before we get out of here and head into the weekend. As I mentioned, not a ton going on with the Kansas City Chiefs right now, but I expect the Chiefs to be very active in free agency. But on Friday morning, that's off season for you. The Chiefs tendered punter Matt Araiza. It's an exclusive rights free agent deal. The tenders are worth $960 million. They also placed the exclusive rights tender on guard Mike Caliendo, who, as you know, started at left guard for Joe Thuney down the stretch when Joe Thuney slid to left tackle. So I don't think either one of those moves is surprising, particularly for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think those are the kinds of moves that you expect. Now, we'll see if the Chiefs bring in another punter to work out during camp or whatever and push Matt Araiza and see if he can take this thing to another level, because he was a little bit up and down for them this season. But nothing out of the norm there. Nothing shocking. I think what's interesting that also came out on Friday is the Bills and linebacker Terrell Bernard agreed to terms on a 4-year, $50 million deal with $25.2 million guaranteed. And I think this is a deal to watch. This is one that we want to pay attention to as we head into free agency. If the Chiefs are actually going to take a chance and try to bring Nick Bolton back. And I know fans have fans have differing perspectives on Nick Bolton, but I do think organizationally, the Chiefs and the coaching staff absolutely love him as a player. The locker room absolutely loves him as a player. I do think he is a leader on the Chiefs defense. And this Terrell Bernard contract is interesting to watch because we also saw the Eagles pay Zach Bond earlier this week and sign him to a big extension, make him one of the highest paid linebackers in the NFL. Now, the Zach Bond deal, little bit tough for me to stomach if we're talking about Nick Bolton getting that kind of money, because I don't think that Nick Bolton is a full package all around linebacker, but he is still a very good player. And I think he's very important to the way they run things. But if we can get a deal closer to Terrell Bernard, I think that makes a lot of sense for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that's something I would actually be interested in if I'm the Chiefs here moving forward. Now, we'll see what happens. Like I mentioned earlier this week, I feel like Bolton news has been basically non-existent, whereas I feel like we've heard something or something's been reported on virtually every other Chiefs free agent except for Nick Bolton. So I don't really know what to make of all of that heading into free agency next week. But one other thing that I wanted to mention before we get out of here, too, that I think is interesting. First, we expected that free agent wide receiver Chris Godwin would stay in Tampa Bay. But now with the veteran wide receiver market drying up before free agency even begins, it's now expected that Godwin could be the most sought after veteran wide receiver. And again, it's a bad free agent group with T. Higgins getting franchise tagged by the Bengals once again. And so now Godwin, who was playing exceptional last season prior to his injury, now he's the wide receiver to watch when the tampering period opens on Monday. And according to multiple reports, Godwin could command $25 million or more per year, which is crazy for a guy coming off of a season-ending injury, but a guy that absolutely deserves another hefty payday because he is that type of presence. So I think he's going to be another big name to watch. But again, stay tuned in right here on Foolish Club Media as the legal tampering period gets underway on Monday. We'll try to be up to date, be on top of everything for you guys, and make sure that we're discussing each and every move that the Kansas City Chiefs make. I expect them to be super active. They've got cap space. They've got roster needs that they have to go address. I think they are going to be active when this thing opens on Monday. So stay on the lookout for everything that we're doing right here at Foolish Club Media. As always, subscribe, rate, and review. And we will be back on Monday as the free agency news starts to trickle in. I'll talk to you guys then.